Hey. She said it, but he dealt it.
We need a Democratic Party that fights.
This says there's another story blowing everyone away, and that is the alleged leak of private communications of the military strategy in striking Yemen that allegedly was accidentally leaked to an Atlantic reporter. Is that story true? As there are now some people specifically questioning this, all while we got some big revelations through those leaks, specifically that now talk about a larger policy difference between the Vice President of the United States and the current President of the United States. All the while, a lot of people are saying another part of this leak had something to do to sending a message to some of our current allies that probably soon won't be our allies. All of this is, again, you go on Google News and you see what people are talking about. Everyone's obsessed about this story, as CBS News has top Trump official included the Atlantic editor in a group chat in plans to bomb Yemen. Of course, we have Pete Buttigieg. That guy was a pretty pointless, irrelevant politician, saying from an operational security perspective, this is the highest level of F-ups imaginable. These people cannot keep America safe. As Brian Krasenstein has been having a heyday here tweeting about this. And of course, good old hill dog, Hillary Clinton herself, the lady that got her emails hacked and released by WikiLeaks. Yep, the same lady that, by the way, in her own emails, was knowingly instructing her staff to send classified docs over unsecure messaging platforms. Yeah, that lady, she's lecturing now everybody about this, posting this story and saying, you have got to be kidding me. And of course, she shut down comments. I was just waiting. I was just going to do a whole minute, 2 minute, just going through the replies here because they would be pretty epic here. But Hill Dog made sure that, of course, we weren't able to see anything, just like her relationship with her hubby and Epstein, that, of course, we still don't know the full bigger ramifications of. So, yeah, very rich here. And again, Washington Post, White House acknowledges inadvertent leak involving Trump official. The Guardian, outrage after White House accidentally texts journalist. War plans, huge screw up. And, of course, the Atlantic here that was added to this Signal chat with a lot of prominent members of the United States government. And in their piece by Jeffrey Goldberg, the member who was added to that Signal chat, the title is The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling. Interesting perspective here, specifically with this journalist describing his story behind a paywall. But anyway, Donald Trump was asked about this, and just to be kind of frank here, he kind of seemed a little confused about this matter. But this is what the President of the United States had to say about this.
Your reaction to the story in the Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time. Anybody else?
Yep, Trump was kind of caught off guard here, as now there's some people coming forward and saying this was probably, according to, again, the more favorable MAGA Republican conservative group, quote, deliberate leak here. Was that the case here? Again, you be the jury here, as we have one post here from the cynical Publius saying the Signal chat and the Atlantic article. The minute I read the chat, my very first thought was that Goldberg was specifically and deliberately included so that he would leak what he saw to the public. The idea was to let Europe know just how unhappy American leadership is with Europe's unwillingness to pull its weight militarily. And we talked about that extensively here on this channel, saying specifically, the Europeans are not going to choose a warfare over a welfare state. It's pretty clear. pretty eye-opening and pretty evident that the Europeans love their socialism, and they're not really going to back off of that. They love it, as these communications leaked involved that. This cynical Publius goes on saying the back channel, seemingly accidentally nature of that reveals was powerful and I believe intentional. Also, as someone who has read his fair share of top secret SCI war plans, this ain't it. As we also found out that Michael Waltz is a retired, quote, Green Beret colonel who was the one that invited this journalist to the chat here. All of this is happening as everyone is piecing this story together, coming out with their own kind of assertions here. But what did the chat room specifically show here? Because when you do read the chat, you do get specific bigger kind of foreshadowing with some major geopolitical shakeups that we have been warning about for a very long time now. Before talking about that and reading the text messages and telling you exactly what was in there, we want to tell you about thebestpoliticalshirts.com, where you can get the shirts like the one that I'm wearing right now. That has normies filled with seed oils, and then me filled with freedom, protein, caffeine, indignation, sovereignty, and Riz. Yep, the Riz is specifically down there for a reason. All of this is I was out this weekend. I went to the Don't Die Summit in Miami, Florida here, and I had a blast. I was wearing a kind of very salacious shirt that you could get on thebestpoliticalshirts.com, selling essentially my freedom seeds. That's one way of saying it. And the number of people I had coming out, I had someone who was a fan who was like, oh yeah, hey, I was like hanging out with him. I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah. And then at the end of it, he was like, where did I get the shirt? How do I buy it? I'm buying it right now. He literally bought the shirt right after the event because of how many people came up to me for that specific shirt. This is another shirt that does really well, specifically with an in-group of individuals that really is in the know. More and more people are in the know. A lot of people are afraid to kind of speak out now, but you don't have to fear no more, as clearly the world is changing very dramatically, and so will international foreign relations. Before getting into that, again, just type in seed oils on the top of thebestpoliticalshirts.com, and then bada bing, bada boom, this shirt pops up here, and it's a great shirt. I love this shirt, and truly, for the people who recognize it, I'm like, you're my pal. You're going to be my buddy. You're going to be my friend here, as we have a great selection of shirts against seed oils, which we have been talking about for an extremely long time. I would say we have the best political shirts out there, and that's why we created thebestpoliticalshirts.com. The link is down in the description. Do your own forms of lazy activism. Get involved, get activated, and start the conversation. It's more important than ever not to be afraid of who you really are and to represent your ideas that are your truths. Again, fear nothing. Life is short. Be your own unique individual self with the shirts on thebestpoliticalshirts.com. Now, let's read off some of the messages here, because it's kind of big here. There's two big things that are very glaring that do show us an insight into what's going on here that we previously didn't really we saw hinted at, but now having these conversations leak pinpoints to where this administration is going, who's actually going along with the bigger agenda that Donald Trump is propelling, who's actually not going along with it. As ALX writes, the leaked messages show that J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, and Stephen Miller all agree with President Trump that we could, quote, no longer allow Europe to keep taking advantage of us. Of course, the usual suspects are now using the leak to try to drive a wedge between the VP and Trump. Won't work. And there have been a lot of underhanded efforts, specifically meant to divide Donald Trump from his closest allies, like Elon Musk. There have been other deliberate media efforts to try to kind of push him away from other populist figures within the bigger kind of conservative movement, and all of those haven't really kind of worked here. But clearly, the messaging is pretty clear here, especially if you're a European leader. Hey, the top brass of the United States government isn't happy with you guys not putting up your fair share when it comes to European national defense here. And this is something that's been brewing for a while, ever since J.D. Vance specifically went to Europe and during the Munich conference said, hey, We're becoming not aligned with our core values and beliefs here. You guys are not putting in your weight for defense here. We are. We're spending a lot of money on NATO. We're spending a huge sum of money on all of this. And it's time that you guys kind of put up here, because if you guys want to be talking reckless and crazy and talking about attacking Russia and doing this stuff, that's going to be something that you guys do, and you guys can't hide behind us in order to propel and push these larger kind of crazy talking points that have also sabotaged the peace deal that Donald Trump has been trying to achieve here. We saw the British, we saw the French, we saw the Germans, but specifically the British, more importantly here, coming out and saying, yeah, United States cuts you off. Don't worry, Ukraine, we got you here. And usurping a bigger kind of leverage point that Donald Trump was utilizing here, part of his kind of negotiation skills. And the Europeans were coming in there and conflicting with his larger kind of moves that he was trying to achieve and get done here. A lot of those moves weren't made. I would argue the peace hasn't been made because of these hostile European powers that have a big bark, but not a strong bite. Since, of course, the Europeans overwhelmingly prioritize welfare over warfare. They're not going to change, and they're not going to shift from that larger policy initiative. We saw J.D. Vance address this during the Munich conference and also say, hey, you guys aren't respecting free speech here, and that's going to be an issue, especially since, there's so many leaders, especially the leaders now in Romania. Romania is shaping up to be the new Ukraine here. There's so many leaders that are discriminated against, that are arrested, that are deplatformed, that are attacked for expressing right-wing conservative values and ideas. And it's fair to argue that Europe has been hijacked by the woke liberal mind virus, and they have institutionalized their train of thinking to where now any counterpoints are automatically attacked and people are arrested for even expressing them in a funny way. When you have Europe on a total pathway towards totalitarianism, and America trying to revitalize its kind of infancy of respecting and caring for free speech. Those are two different moral values that are ideologically opposed to each other. J.D. Vance said specifically, you guys got to respect free speech. What happened? Just a couple days, German politicians came out on 60 Minutes bragging, laughing with total hubris about how great it was to confiscate people's phones and devices and computers for making jokes that they thought were inappropriate. The UK followed suit, arrested a bunch of people for thought crimes. As I think that the other part here that was very interesting highlighted how J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, privately actually pushed back against Trump's moves to strike the Houthis in Yemen, calling it a, quote, mistake and inconsistent with his message. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth replied to defend the decision in the private chat room here, but J.D. Vance spoke about something that I spoke about here on this particular channel, as well as very few other independent journalists spoke out about as well. And this was the infuriating part, because when you're in independent media, all right, there's people that are always bunch up in gangs. They always bunch up and they get ideologically hijacked and captured. They either just regurgitate everything everyone else is saying and they kind of fall in line. That's not what the Trump base really is. But when it came to this specific issue, very few people had the balls and the courage to come out and say, this doesn't serve us. Bombing the poorest, dumbest, most idiotic people on the face of this earth. Again, excuse me, I apologize, but look at the IQ, all right? Look at the drug abuse, okay? We're talking about guys that even according to the U.S. Pentagon, are incapable of retaliating against us. And this was the U.S. Pentagon saying this. This was the high brass of the U.S. military saying, yeah, they tried to attack our ship, but they fired a missile more than 100 missiles. They fired a missile more than 100 miles away. Okay, these guys clearly incompetent. Okay, Donald Trump could have had a big victory here, propelling his peace deal for the Middle East and making sure that it's stuck, making sure that the ceasefire stuck. Therefore, the Houthis wouldn't have been talking wild. The Houthis were talking wild. Sure, I'm not a fan of the Houthis, okay? I'm not a fan of them. But to spend our resources bombing and getting engaged in a fight that's not really ours is something that J.D. Vance was also expressing privately. Very few people were expressing that opinion other than us. I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of people that unsubscribed, and it's okay. We're supposed to have differences of opinion. I'm not here to be audience hijacked. I'm not here to just regurgitate and tell you what you want to know and what you want to hear. We've been around here for 21 years, and we have principles. We stick by those principles, and we don't just waver them because someone is in political office that we like. I like Donald Trump. I think he's doing an incredible job. I like J.D. Vance. I think he's doing an incredible job. Doesn't mean that they are outside of the window of criticism. Everyone's feet should be held to the fire, and some people like it, some people don't. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. That's okay. But when you're subscribed here, you're subscribed to an independent media organization that still keeps true to its goals and virtue. Free speech, anti-war, pro-freedom, pro-liberty, and, of course, pro-Americana. We love this country. And I think once you really start to love and appreciate this country, you want to make sure it's making the right moves. And I agree with J.D. Vance here. This was a mistake. It's inconsistent with the larger messaging of what Donald Trump said, as he specifically said, why is Joe Biden bombing the Houthis? It's not our business. We should not do that, when he was campaigning for president of the United States, and now he's bombing the Houthis. And some people don't like criticism. I don't care. We need a legitimate conversation. I think now we're finally able to have it through some of these leaks. Now, again, was this a deliberate leak? Was it an accidental leak? What do you think is really going on here? Let's determine it in the chat room. Press number 1 in the comment section if you think that this was a deliberate leak. Press number 2 in the chat room if you think it was an accident and a screw up like the corporate media is using. Now, the corporate media, Pete Buttigieg and other the crowds and scenes like, oh, they're dunking on Trump administration. I think there's a possibility. I think there's like a 65% possibility that this was kind of deliberate here in order to get out this messaging. But we're in the kind of realm and territory of 4D chess here. I don't know exactly what happened. A lot of people always like, I know exactly what happened. No, you don't. You're full of crap. I don't know what exactly happened here. Was it a legitimate mistake? I think a smaller possibility, yes. Was it a deliberate leak to kind of signal by either J.D. Vance that, hey, I am with the America First crowd, or was it meant to signal to Europe? But the Europe part is a little confusing here because you have J.D. Vance literally going to Europe and telling them this. Okay, you have Donald Trump saying this all the time. You don't need to set up a psyop to say that. That part doesn't make sense. It's more indicative of the disagreement with the Yemen part that maybe someone, a part of J.D. Vance's team, wanted the world to see. But again, the Yemen part wasn't even a big issue with the Trump supporters, right? Like, everyone's like, okay, I don't really want to talk about it. People are like, yeah, whatever, it's over, it's done. I don't want to. We talked about it. It was uncomfortable for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like it, but every other, it wasn't that big of an issue. So I wouldn't see J.D. Vance kind of doing this as well. That's my own kind of thinking about what I think is going on here. What do you think is going on here? Let me know down in the comment section below as this story unfolds. We will get more details about this, as now there's people calling for prosecutions. Will the prosecutions happen? I don't think so. What do you think of the new camera angle? I had a lot of people complaining about the other time I used this camera. They're like, oh no, it's horrible. We also have the super wide camera. Look, I have all the camera angles here for you on this independent media organization. And then, boom. I hope I didn't make you dizzy. I was just playing around with our studio. Look at the great studio. Atlas is going for a little bit of a walk now, so she's not here. Look at that sign that you can get on wearechange.shop. Great sign. Look at that. I don't know. Some people probably hate this camera angle. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool. I did one from like back here, but then my like double chin was showing. I was like, I ain't showing that. Anyway, get a t-shirt on thebestbloggershirts.com. Get active. Get engaged in the conversation. Let me know. Let's start that conversation down below because I think it's an interesting conversation to start here. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more. All here exclusively on youtube.com/wearechange.